The fleet came out of faster-than-light travel like a wound tearing open in the sky. 4,000 warships, each one the size of a small city, arranged in perfect rows that stretched across the darkness between Earth and Mars. They were silver and sharp, covered in symbols that no human could read, and they hummed with an energy that made every sensor on Earth scream at once. High Arbiter Vorath Keln stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Divine Authority, and looked down at the little blue planet below. He had done this many times before. 200 worlds had seen this same sight, his fleet filling their sky like a curtain of metal and fire. 200 worlds had surrendered. Some had cried. Some had begged. A few had tried to fight. It never mattered. The Tetheran Dominion had ruled the galaxy for 6,000 years, and no species had ever refused them for long. His translators turned his words into every human language at once, and pushed them across every frequency, every screen, every device on Earth, and every human colony in 14 star systems. "People of Earth," he said, and his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "You exist within space claimed by the Tetheran Dominion. You have been assessed and found to be a developing species of minor significance. You are hereby ordered to surrender all military forces, dismantle all shipyards and weapons facilities, and accept Dominion governance over your worlds. You have one solar rotation to comply. If you do not, we will demonstrate what refusal costs. This is not a negotiation." He closed the channel and leaned back in his chair. His second officer, a tall female with gray skin and 4 eyes, looked at him. "How long do you think they will take to respond, High Arbiter?" Keln almost smiled. "They never take long. The short-lived species are always the quickest to panic." He was wrong. Minutes passed, then an hour, then 2. The communication officers on every Dominion ship waited for the flood of signals they always received. The desperate calls, the offers of tribute, the pleading voices of politicians trying to save their people. They received nothing. Every channel from Earth was silent. Not jammed, not blocked, simply silent. As if 6 billion humans had heard the most powerful empire in the galaxy threaten to destroy them, and had responded by saying nothing at all. Keln felt something he did not recognize. It was small, like a cold needle pressing against the back of his mind. He ignored it. "They are in shock," he told his officers. "Primitive species often freeze before they break." On Earth, there was no shock. There was no freezing. In a deep underground chamber beneath the Swiss Alps, the United Planetary Council had gathered within 15 minutes of the ultimatum. 37 representatives from every nation and colony sat around a curved table, and at the head of that table sat Admiral Kira Osei. She was a small woman with dark skin and close-cut gray hair. She was 61 years old. She had never raised her voice in a council session, and she did not raise it now. "You have all seen the ultimatum," she said. "You know what Project Obsidian is. You know what we have built. The question before this council is simple. Do we submit, or do we respond?" The debate lasted 47 minutes. It was not heated. It was not fearful. Every person in that room had known this day might come. They had prepared for it their entire careers. Some of them had prepared for it their entire lives. The vote was unanimous. Admiral Osei typed a message herself. 6 words, transmitted on an open channel to the Dominion fleet. The message read, "We decline. Leave our system now." Aboard the Divine Authority, Vorath Keln read the message and laughed. He actually laughed. His officers stared at him because they had never heard him do that before. "Brave little creatures," he said. "Begin the demonstration. Target the station near their 8th planet." Elysium Station was a research platform orbiting Neptune. 300 scientists lived and worked there, studying deep space. It was defenseless. The Dominion always chose defenseless targets first. It was a lesson, a way of showing a species what would happen to their cities, their families, their children, if they did not kneel. 6 Dominion destroyers broke formation and turned toward Neptune. They powered their weapons. They locked their targeting systems. And then every alarm on every Dominion ship went off at once. Keln grabbed the edge of his command console as his sensor officers began shouting over each other. The readings made no sense. A massive energy signature had appeared behind Saturn's rings, an area that had been scanned and confirmed empty less than an hour ago. But it was not empty now. Something was there, something enormous. "What is that?" Keln demanded. Before anyone could answer, a human voice came through on an open channel. It was calm and clear, the voice of a woman who sounded like she had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. "This is Admiral Kira Ose of the United Earth Fleet," the voice said. "You should not have come here." And then the darkness behind Saturn came alive. Ships. Thousands of ships. They appeared out of nothing, as if the black of space itself had broken apart and given birth to them. They were not silver, like the Dominion fleet. They were black. Pure, absolute black, darker than the void around them. They did not reflect light. They did not glow. They moved like shadows given form and purpose, and they were everywhere, spreading across the solar system in formations that no Dominion tactical officer had ever seen. Keln stared at his sensor display. His throat went dry. The numbers kept climbing. 1,000, 3,000, 5,000, 8,000, 12,000 warships, each one radiating power signatures that made his own capital ships look like toys. "That is impossible. Our intelligence reported they had fewer than 200 military vessels." His second officer looked at him, and for the first time in her career, he saw fear in her 4 eyes. "High Arbiter," she said quietly, "I do not think their intelligence reports were accurate." Keln looked out at the wall of black ships that now surrounded his fleet on every side. He thought of 200 conquered worlds. He thought of 6,000 years of Dominion rule. He thought of every species that had ever knelt before the Dominion's might. None of them had ever looked like this. The cold needle at the back of his mind had become something larger, something that wrapped around his chest and made it hard to breathe. He finally recognized what it was, and behind the doubt, growing fast and sharp, was something the High Arbiter of the Tetheran Dominion had never once felt in his long career of conquest. It was fear. Admiral Ose sat in her command chair aboard the HSS Prometheus, the flagship of the Black Armada. Her hands were steady. Her heartbeat was 62 beats per minute. She had waited 20 years for this day. She opened a fleet-wide channel to every human ship, all 12,000 of them, and spoke 4 words. "Fenris Protocol, stand ready." The Black Armada held its position, silent and dark, a wall of teeth around the throat of the most powerful fleet the galaxy had ever sent to Earth. And they waited, perfectly still, for the enemy to understand what they were looking at. For 9 long seconds, nobody moved. 12,000 black warships hung in the void like sleeping predators, and 4,000 Dominion vessels sat frozen between them, their silver hulls suddenly looking very small and very bright against all that darkness. Lieutenant Dren Vasek was 26 years old. He served as a junior tactical officer aboard the Dominion cruiser Starbound Fist, and he had never been in a real battle. He had trained for years. He had studied Dominion military history. He had memorized every formation, every strategy, every victory. The Dominion did not lose. That was not an opinion. It was a fact written into the bones of every officer who wore the uniform. But as he stared at his sensor display and watched the impossible number of enemy ships continue to grow, he felt that fact begin to crack. "How did they hide all of this?" he asked, not meaning to speak out loud. The officer beside him, a veteran of 40 years, did not answer. She was gripping her console so hard that her gray knuckles had turned white. On the flagship Divine Authority, High Arbiter Vorath Keln made the decision that 6,000 years of military tradition demanded. He would not retreat. The Dominion had never retreated, and he would not be the first to break that record. If these humans had built a larger fleet, then so be it. Numbers alone did not win battles. Discipline won battles. Experience won battles. And the Dominion had more of both than any species alive. All ships, Conquest Formation 7, he ordered. We will break their center and scatter them. Begin the advance. 4,000 Dominion warships surged forward in a formation that had crushed every enemy it had ever faced. It was a wall of concentrated firepower designed to punch through the heart of an enemy fleet and tear it in half. The ships moved with perfect coordination, their weapons charging, their shields at maximum. Admiral Kira Osei watched them come. She sat in her chair aboard the Prometheus and studied the Dominion formation on her tactical display. She had studied Dominion tactics for 30 years. She knew every formation they had. She knew the weaknesses in each one. She had designed specific responses to all of them. They are using Formation 7, her tactical officer reported. Osei nodded. Fenris Protocol. Engage. Instead, it broke apart. The massive fleet dissolved into hundreds of smaller groups, packs of 15 to 20 ships each, and they began to move in patterns that no Dominion officer had ever seen. They moved like wolves. Each pack operated independently, but in perfect coordination with every other pack, through a network of artificial intelligence systems that linked every human ship together into a single thinking mind. They did not communicate with radio signals that could be intercepted. They communicated through quantum-encrypted data streams that moved faster than light and could not be jammed, broken, or even detected. The first Dominion ships entered weapons range and opened fire. Bright beams of plasma and streams of kinetic rounds poured toward the nearest human vessels. The shots hit their targets, but they did nothing. The black hulls of the human ships absorbed the energy like water soaking into sand. The armor, called Void Plate by its creators, was made of materials that the Dominion had never encountered. It did not deflect energy. It ate it. The plasma blasts splashed across the black surfaces and vanished. The kinetic rounds struck and stopped dead, their momentum stolen and converted into power that fed back into the ship's own systems. Lieutenant Vasek watched a full broadside from 3 Dominion battlecruisers hit a single human frigate, a ship less than a quarter of their size. The frigate did not slow down. It did not even change course. It simply kept coming, dark and silent, like a knife sliding through smoke. Their armor, Vasek said. It absorbed everything, all of it. Then the human ships fired back. The weapons were called Rift Lance cannons, though the Dominion would not learn that name until later. They did not fire beams or projectiles. They fired something far worse. Each shot tore a tiny hole in the fabric of space itself, a crack no wider than a hair that lasted less than 1/10 of a second. But when that crack passed through a ship, it pulled the atoms on either side of it in opposite directions. The effect was immediate and terrible. A Dominion heavy cruiser, 800 meters long and carrying a crew of 3,000, was hit by a single Rift Lance shot. The crack passed through its center from bow to stern. For one heartbeat, nothing seemed to happen. Then the ship tore itself apart from the inside. It did not explode. It split, silently and completely, the two halves drifting away from each other, trailing air and bodies and the fragments of everything that had been inside. Vasek watched it happen on his screen. He watched it happen again, and again, and again. The wolf packs tore into the Dominion fleet from every angle. They struck from the sides, from above, from below, diving in fast, firing their rift lances and pulling away before the Dominion ships could even turn their weapons toward them. When a Dominion squadron tried to concentrate fire on a single pack, 2 more packs would hit them from behind. When ships tried to retreat into the safety of the main formation, they found that the formation no longer existed. The human packs had sliced it into pieces in the first 10 minutes. It was not a battle. Vasek understood that now. A battle required 2 sides with some chance of victory. This was something else. This was a demonstration, the same kind of demonstration that the Dominion had planned to make by destroying Elysium Station. The humans were showing them what it felt like. In 90 minutes, 800 Dominion ships were destroyed. Some were cut in half by Riftlance fire. Some were disabled by electronic warfare attacks that shut down their systems, like a hand turning off a light. Some simply stopped, their crews surrendering, rather than face another second of the slaughter. Humanity lost 12 ships, 12 out of 12,000. On the divine authority, Vorath Keln stood in silence. His tactical display was a field of red, destroyed ships, disabled ships, ships whose crews were screaming for help on channels that no one could answer because there were too many voices and not enough survivors. He had conquered 200 worlds. He had never lost a battle. He had believed with every fiber of his being that the Dominion was the greatest military power the galaxy had ever produced. He looked at the black ships on his screen, still moving, still hunting, still perfectly coordinated, and he knew that belief was dead. "Order a full retreat," he said quietly. "High Arbiter, the retreat corridor? I know." There was no retreat corridor. The human fleet had closed every gap. The Dominion was surrounded on all sides by a cage of dark ships that showed no lights, broadcast no signals, and made no sound. They were just there, waiting, like the walls of a trap that had been set long before the prey ever walked into it. A communication signal came through. It was Admiral Osei. "High Arbiter Keln," she said. Her voice was the same as before, calm, steady, without anger or triumph. "You came to take our home. You do not get to leave until we are finished talking." Keln closed his eyes. Around him, his officers were silent. The bridge of the most powerful flagship in the Dominion fleet felt very small. Outside, the Black Armada held its position, patient, silent. A circle of wolves, with their teeth around the throat of an empire, waiting, not to kill, but to be heard. And somewhere on the starborn fist, Lieutenant Dren Vasek turned off his tactical display because he could not stand to look at it anymore. He sat in his chair, staring at nothing, and tried to understand how everything he had been taught about the galaxy had been wrong. The humans had not fought like a species that was defending itself. They had fought like a species that had been ready for this moment for a very, very long time. And that, more than anything else, was what terrified him. Vorath Keln tried to send a message to the Dominion homeworld. He entered his personal command codes, codes that could reach across the galaxy in seconds through faster-than-light communication relays that the Dominion had built over thousands of years. He typed the message himself. It was simple. Subjugation fleet compromised. Request immediate reinforcement. Priority absolute. He pressed send. The system rejected it. He tried again. Rejected. He tried a different relay. Rejected. He tried every backup channel, every emergency frequency, every hidden communication path that the Dominion military had built for exactly this kind of situation. All of them were dead. He turned to his communication officer. "Explain." The officer's hands were shaking. "High Arbiter, our faster-than-light communication systems have been jammed. All of them. Every relay within range is being blocked by a signal we cannot identify or counter. I have never seen technology like this." Keln felt the cold grow deeper in his chest. "When did the jamming begin?" The officer checked his instruments 3 times before answering, because the answer did not make sense. Approximately 2 hours before the human fleet appeared, High Arbiter. They were jamming us before we even knew they were there. Keln sat down slowly. He understood now, with a clarity that felt like a blade between his ribs, that the humans had not reacted to his ultimatum. They had not scrambled their fleet in a panic. They had not made desperate last-minute plans. Every single thing that had happened since his fleet arrived in the Sol system, the silence, the short reply, the decloaking, the battle, the surrounding of his fleet, all of it had been planned. All of it had been prepared in advance, probably years in advance, waiting for exactly this day. His fleet had not walked into a battle. It had walked into a trap that had been built, tested, and perfected long before the Dominion ever decided to come to Earth. 1 hour. That was what Admiral Osei gave him. 1 hour to surrender his remaining 2,600 ships, or the Black Armada would finish what it had started. During that hour, while Kelm sat on his silent bridge and felt the weight of 6,000 years of Dominion pride pressing down on his shoulders, something happened 400 light-years away. Commander Idris Wren was 38 years old, born on Mars, raised in the military academy on Luna, and given command of the most dangerous unit in the Black Armada, the Reapers. They were a squadron of 12 fast-attack stealth frigates, each one crewed by 40 of the most highly trained soldiers humanity had ever produced. Their ships were smaller than most, built for speed and silence, equipped with phantom drives that could cross between stars without leaving any trace at all. Wren received her orders from Admiral Osei through a quantum channel that no one in the galaxy could intercept. The orders were short. Strike 3 Dominion border outposts simultaneously. Disable all defenses. Harm no one. The last part was the most important. Wren split her squadron into 3 groups of 4 and sent them to 3 different star systems at the edge of Dominion space. The outposts there were military stations that watched the borders and controlled the flow of ships in and out of Dominion territory. Each one was crewed by thousands of Dominion soldiers and protected by defense platforms that could destroy a small fleet. The Reapers arrived at all 3 outposts at exactly the same moment. They did not fire a single weapon. Instead, they used electronic warfare systems so advanced that the Dominion defenses never even registered their presence. In less than 4 minutes, every defense platform at every outpost went dark. Every weapon system shut down. Every door locked. Every screen displayed the same message, written in the Dominion's own language. This facility has been disabled by the United Earth Fleet. No one has been harmed. This is a courtesy. Commander Wren stood on the bridge of her frigate and watched the Dominion outpost through her viewport. It floated in space, dark and powerless, its crew alive and unharmed, but completely helpless. She could have destroyed it. She could have killed every person aboard. The Reapers had the firepower to turn all 3 outposts into dust in seconds. But that was not the point. The point was precision. The point was showing the Dominion that humanity could reach out across hundreds of light years, strike at the heart of their territory, and choose, with perfect control, to show mercy. Because mercy given by choice was far more frightening than destruction. Destruction meant your enemy was angry. Mercy meant your enemy was so confident in their power that they did not need to kill you. The message reached Vorath Kelm 30 minutes into his hour. His communication officer managed to receive a short burst from one of the border outposts, a fragment that slipped through the jamming for just a moment. It contained sensor logs showing human stealth ships appearing out of nowhere and shutting down the outpost like a parent turning off a child's toy. Kelm read the report. Then he read it again. Then he set it down and stared at the wall of his command deck for a very long time. He thought about the intelligence reports he had read before this mission. Reports that described humans as primitive, divided, emotional, short-lived, and technologically inferior. Reports that classified Earth as a minor world with no significant military capability. reports that recommended subjugation with minimal force because humans were expected to surrender quickly. Every word of those reports had been wrong, and now Keln understood that they had not been wrong by accident. They had been wrong because humans had wanted them to be wrong. Every piece of information the Dominion had ever gathered about humanity had been carefully shaped, controlled, and fed to them by a species that understood, perhaps better than anyone in the galaxy, the value of being underestimated. The hour ended. Keln gave the order. 2,600 Dominion warships powered down their weapons and lowered their shields. It was the first surrender in Dominion military history. Admiral Osei came aboard the Divine Authority with an escort of 4 soldiers in black armor that seemed to drink the light around them. She was shorter than Keln expected. She walked with a slight limp, an old injury, he guessed. She did not smile. She did not gloat. She sat down across from him in his own command chamber, and she looked at him with eyes that were tired and sharp at the same time. "I want you to understand something," she said. "We never wanted this. We wanted to be left alone. We wanted to build our worlds, raise our children, and explore the stars in peace. We asked for nothing from the Dominion or anyone else." Keln said nothing. "But the galaxy does not leave you alone," Osei continued. "We learned that lesson 150 years ago, when the first alien ship found Earth and tried to take what was ours. We survived that. Barely. And we decided, as a species, that we would never be that vulnerable again. So we built. Quietly. Patiently. In the dark, where no one was looking." She leaned forward. "The Black Armada was not built to conquer anyone. It was built to make sure that no one could ever conquer us. That is all we ever wanted." Keln finally spoke. His voice was rough. "Then you have what you wanted. You have defeated the greatest fleet the Dominion has ever assembled. You have proven your strength. What more is there to discuss?" Osei looked at him for a long moment, and then she said something that changed everything. "The Armada was never meant for you, Keln. The Dominion was never the threat we were preparing for. You are not the reason we built 12,000 warships and hid them in the dark for a century." Keln felt the cold again, but worse this time. Deeper, spreading through his whole body. "Then who?" he asked. Osei stood. "Come with me. There is something you need to see." She walked out of the chamber. After a moment, Vorath Keln, High Arbiter of the Tetheran Dominion, conqueror of 200 worlds, commander of the first fleet in 6,000 years to surrender, stood up and followed her. Because whatever could make a species build an armada like that in secret and still call it insufficient was something he needed to understand, even if the understanding terrified him. Especially if it terrified him. The ship that carried them was fast, silent, and completely invisible to every known sensor. Vorath Keln sat in a small cabin with no windows and felt the faint vibration of the phantom drive as it carried them across light years in minutes, leaving no trail, no energy signature, no evidence that anything had passed through that space at all. Admiral Osei did not speak during the journey. She sat across from him, with her hands folded and her eyes closed. And Keln had the strange thought that she looked like someone preparing for a funeral. They arrived at a place called Station Cerberus. It was built into the heart of an asteroid, in a region of space that the Dominion's oldest star charts marked with a single word: forbidden. Every species Keln had ever conquered had similar markings on their own maps. Dead zones, cursed regions, places where ancient texts warned that no living being should go. The Dominion had always assumed these were primitive superstitions. They had never investigated. Station Cerberus was enormous. It stretched through the core of the asteroid like a city buried in stone. Its corridors carved from rock and reinforced with the same black material that covered the Armada's hulls. Thousands of people worked here, scientists, engineers, analysts, all of them moving with the quiet urgency of people who understood that time was running out. Osei brought Kelm to a chamber deep in the station center. The room was circular, and its walls were covered with images, symbols, and data that glowed with a faint blue light. In the center of the room stood a woman with dark hair and tired eyes. Her name was Dr. Lena Farash, and she was Earth's leading expert on a subject that Kelm did not yet know existed. "Show him," Osei said. Dr. Farash touched a console, and the walls came alive. The images expanded into three-dimensional projections that filled the room. Ruins of structures so vast, they made Dominion cities look like sandcastles. Broken rings that had once circled entire stars. Shattered platforms that floated in the void between galaxies, each one larger than any space station Kelm had ever seen. All of them ancient, all of them dead. 80 years ago, Farash said, a human deep space exploration vessel found the first fragments in a system with no name, far beyond the edge of known space. We have been studying them ever since. She pulled up a series of symbols carved into the surface of the ruins. They were not in any known language, but human linguists had spent decades breaking them down, cross-referencing them with fragments found at dozens of other sites scattered across the galaxy. We call them the architects, Farash continued. They existed approximately 2 to 3 billion years ago. They were a civilization so advanced that they built structures between galaxies. They manipulated dark energy. They engineered stars. By every measure we can apply, they were the most powerful species that has ever existed. She paused. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. Something destroyed them, completely. Every world they built, every station, every ship, every record, almost all of it was erased. Not just destroyed, erased. Pulled apart at a level so fundamental that in most cases we can only find them by looking for the holes they left behind. Places in space where something should exist, but doesn't. Kelm stared at the projections. He had conquered worlds. He had commanded fleets. He understood power. But what he was looking at was beyond power. It was beyond anything he had a word for. What killed them, he asked. The beautiful ruins disappeared and were replaced by data. Sensor readings, energy patterns, mathematical models that filled the room with numbers and graphs. At the center of it all was a shape. It was not a ship. It was not a structure. It was something else, a form made of collapsed matter and dark energy, vast and slow, and wrong in a way that made Kelm's mind hurt to look at it. We do not know what they are, Farash said. The architect texts use a word that our linguists have translated as the hollow. They are not alive in any way we understand. They may be a natural phenomenon. They may be engineered. They may be something else entirely. What we do know is this. They come from the space between galaxies. They emerge on a cycle of roughly 2 to 3 billion years. And when they come, they destroy every advanced civilization they find. Every single one. Then they go dormant again, and the galaxy starts over. The last cycle ended approximately 2.1 billion years ago. We have detected energy patterns at the edge of the galaxy that match the architect's descriptions. The patterns are growing. Something is waking up out there, High Arbiter, and it is not going to care whether you call yourself a dominion, or an empire, or a god. It is going to come, and it is going to try to erase everything. The room was silent. Kelm realized his hands were gripping the edge of the console in front of him. He made himself let go. "This is why you built the Armada," he said. Osei nodded. "We found the first ruins 80 years ago. We understood the threat within a decade. And we realized that nothing we had, nothing any single species had, would be enough to survive what was coming. So we started building." "But you built in secret," Kelm said. "You hid everything. If this threat is real, why did you not tell the galaxy? Why did you not ask for help?" Osei's expression did not change, but something in her eyes hardened. "We did," she said. 100 years ago we sent envoys to 6 spacefaring species. We shared our evidence. We asked for cooperation. 3 of them ignored us completely. 2 of them tried to steal our research and our technology. The 6th species captured our envoys and tried to sell them as slaves. She let that sit in the air for a moment. So we stopped asking, we stopped trusting, and we built the Armada ourselves, in the dark, because the galaxy taught us that the only species we could rely on was our own. Kelm thought about the Dominion's own forbidden zones, vast areas of space that their most ancient records warned them never to enter, regions that the oldest Dominion texts described as places where the gods died. He had always assumed those were myths, stories told by primitive ancestors who did not understand the universe. Now, he understood that those stories were warnings, real warnings, passed down across billions of years, their meaning worn away by time until no one remembered what they were trying to say. Your own people have the same knowledge, Farash said gently, as if she could read his thoughts. Every spacefaring species we have studied has some version of it. Forbidden zones, ancient warnings, stories about a darkness that comes and takes everything. The architects tried to warn the future, but memories are fragile, and 3 billion years is a very long time. Osei stepped forward. I am offering you something, Keln. Not submission, not conquest. A real alliance. Equals working together, sharing everything, building something strong enough to survive what is coming. Humanity will share every technology we have. The Void Plate armor, the Rift Lance weapons, the Phantom Drive. In exchange, every species contributes what they can. Ships, resources, knowledge, people. All of it. Keln looked at her. The Conclave of Hierarchs will not accept this easily. The Dominion does not share power. Then the Dominion will die, Osei said. There was no threat in her voice. It was simply a fact, stated plainly. Not by our hand, by theirs. The Hollow does not negotiate. It does not accept surrender. It does not care about your history or your pride. It comes and it erases. That is all it does. Keln closed his eyes. He stood there for a long time, surrounded by the ghosts of a civilization that had built wonders between the stars and been wiped away like dust. I will speak to the Conclave, he said finally. I will tell them the truth. I cannot promise they will listen. That is all I ask, Osei said. As Kelm's ship prepared to leave Station Cerberus, an alarm cut through the station like a scream. Every screen, every display, every console lit up at once with the same alert. A young human analyst, sitting at a sensor station, spoke in a voice that was steady but pale with fear. Contact at the Galactic Rim, Sector Omega-9. This is not a sensor ghost. Repeat, this is not a ghost. Something has just crossed the threshold. The room went cold. Farash pulled up the sensor data. On the display, at the very edge of the galaxy, a shape was forming. Vast, dark, and ancient, moving with a slowness that somehow made it more terrifying, not less. Osei looked at the shape on the screen. Then she looked at Keln. We are out of time, she said. And out in the black, at the edge of everything, the Hollow stirred. After 2 billion years of sleep, something had woken them. The Conclave of Hierarchs met on Tethar Prime, the Dominion's capital world, in a chamber that had not changed in 4,000 years. 12 rulers sat in a circle of stone thrones, each one representing 1,000 worlds, and Vorath Keln stood before them and told them the truth. He told them about the Black Armada. He told them about the battle. He told them about his surrender. And half the conclave rose from their thrones in fury, calling him a traitor, a coward, a disgrace to the Dominion's name. One of them drew a weapon. Keln's guards stepped forward, but Keln raised his hand and stopped them. He let the anger fill the room. He let it burn itself out. Then he told them about the architects, about the Hollow, about what was coming. He showed them the sensor data that the humans had shared, the energy readings from the galactic rim, the patterns that matched the architect warnings, the shape of something vast and ancient moving slowly toward the galaxy's heart. 3 of the hierarchs refused to believe it. They called it human lies, human manipulation, a trick to weaken the Dominion from within. They stormed out of the chamber and sealed their borders. The rest stayed. They looked at the data. They looked at their own ancient texts, the forbidden warnings that had been buried in vaults for millennia. And slowly, painfully, like bones breaking and resetting, they began to understand. The conclave fractured. 9,000 worlds split apart. Some joined the alliance that Osei had proposed. Others retreated into isolation and denial. But enough of them, enough, chose to stand. On Earth, Admiral Osei stood before the United Planetary Council one final time. Behind her, a massive screen displayed the sensor image of the Hollow crossing the galactic threshold. She looked at the representatives of every human world, and she told them the truth that Project Obsidian had hidden for 8 decades. "There is something coming that we cannot stop alone," she said. "We have built the greatest fleet in human history, and it may not be enough. I will not lie to you, we may not survive this. But if we do not fight, nothing survives. No species, no world, no memory of anyone who ever lived. That is not something we can accept. That has never been something we can accept." The response was not slow, it was not hesitant, it was immediate and absolute. Across 14 star systems, hidden shipyards were revealed and expanded. Factories that had been building consumer goods switched to building weapons and armor and ship components within days. Millions of volunteers, engineers, soldiers, pilots, doctors, welders, cooks, lined up to serve. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for nearly a century, and now that the secret was out, the full weight of a species that refused to die quietly came crashing down like a hammer. The first real contact with the Hollow came 3 weeks later, at a Dominion border system called Verath's Gate. A fleet of 500 Dominion warships had been stationed there. They were good ships, well crewed, commanded by experienced officers. When the Hollow constructs entered the system, the Dominion fleet opened fire with everything they had. It lasted 11 seconds. The Hollow did not fight like ships. They were not ships. They were vast constructs of dark energy and collapsed matter, each one dozens of kilometers across, and they moved through space like slow, terrible storms. When the Dominion weapons hit them, the energy was simply absorbed, swallowed into their dark forms, without any visible effect. Then the Hollows struck back. They did not use weapons. They did not need to. They simply reached out with fields of force that pulled matter apart at the atomic level. 500 warships were unmade in seconds, not destroyed, not exploded, but disassembled, every atom separated from every other atom, until there was nothing left but a thin cloud of particles spreading into the void. 800,000 Dominion soldiers died without making a single scratch on the enemy. The sensor recordings were shared across the Alliance. Every species that had agreed to stand together watched them. The fear was enormous. It pressed down on entire civilizations like a physical weight. Some of the smaller species that had joined the Alliance wavered. A few tried to withdraw. But then, something remarkable happened. On Station Cerberus, Dr. Lena Farash and her team had been working without sleep for weeks, digging through architect data that humanity had spent 80 years collecting. 2 days after the destruction at Verath's Gate, they found it, buried in a fragment of architect text that had been mistranslated 3 times over the decades. A frequency. A specific resonance pattern that disrupted the energy bonds holding hollow constructs together. The architects had discovered it too late to save themselves. Humanity discovered it with weeks to spare. Human engineers, working alongside Dominion scientists and technicians from half a dozen other species, integrated the frequency into the Rift Lance weapon systems. The modifications took 4 days. 4 days to adapt the most advanced weapon in human history to fire a resonance pattern billions of years old. They called the new weapons Architect Lances, and they built as many as they could, as fast as they could. The Alliance fleet assembled at the Galactic Rim. Over 40,000 ships from 23 species gathered in a region of space that had never seen so many vessels in one place. The Black Armada formed the core. 12,000 black warships, now equipped with Architect Lances. Around them, Dominion battlecruisers flew alongside the elegant needle ships of the Verithi, the heavy drone carriers of the Os Collective, and dozens of other designs from species that had been strangers or enemies just weeks ago. It was the largest military force ever assembled in the history of the galaxy, and it was still small compared to what was coming. Admiral Kira Osei sat on the bridge of the HSS Prometheus and looked at the tactical display. The Hollow were advancing, a wall of dark constructs stretching across light years, each one ancient and massive and wrong. They moved with the slow certainty of a tide, and they consumed everything in their path. "All ships," she said, her voice carried across 40,000 bridges in 23 languages. "This is Admiral Osei. What is coming toward us has destroyed civilizations that built wonders we can barely imagine. It has been doing this for longer than our stars have burned. Every species that has ever faced the Hollow has faced it alone, and every one of them has died." She paused. On every ship, every crew member was listening. "We are not alone. For the first time in the history of this galaxy, we stand together. Not because we trust each other perfectly, not because we have forgotten our differences, but because we all looked into the dark and decided that we would rather fight beside strangers than die alone. That has to be enough." She took a breath. Engage. The Battle of the Threshold was the most violent event in the recorded history of the galaxy. 40,000 ships surged forward into the wall of hollow constructs, and the darkness answered. Ships died by the hundreds. Entire squadrons were unmade in seconds. The Hollow reached out with their terrible fields, and wherever they touched, matter came apart. Alliance ships that got too close simply stopped existing. The void was full of fragments, shattered hulls, frozen bodies, the dust of ships that had carried thousands of souls. But the Architect Lances worked. The first shot struck a hollow construct, a thing the size of a moon, dark and swirling and ancient, and the resonance frequency tore through it like a crack through ice. The construct shuddered, and then it broke apart, the dark energy that held it together unraveling like a knot being pulled open, and the pieces scattered into the void and went still. A roar went up across every communication channel in the fleet. It started on the human ships, a raw, primal sound, not a cheer, but something deeper, something that came from the gut and the teeth. It spread to the Dominion ships, where officers who had served the Conclave their entire lives screamed alongside humans they had tried to conquer weeks ago. It spread to every species in the fleet. A single voice, made of 23 languages, all saying the same thing. They could be killed. The Hollow could be killed. The battle raged for hours. The cost was staggering. Over 9,000 Alliance ships were destroyed. Millions died. But for every ship that fell, the Architect Lances claimed another hollow construct. One by one, the ancient horrors broke and died, their dark forms scattering like smoke in a wind that had been building for 2 billion years. And then, slowly, the Hollow pulled back. They did not flee. Keln was not sure they could flee, or even understood the concept. But they withdrew, pulling away from the galactic rim, retreating into the void between galaxies where they had slept for so long. They were not defeated. Everyone knew that. This was the first battle, not the last. The Hollow would return. They would adapt. The war was far from over, and it might last for years or decades or longer. But the first battle was a victory, and it changed everything. Admiral Osei stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching the hollow fade into the dark. The ship was damaged. Her crew was exhausted. 3 of her closest friends had died in the battle, and she had not yet had time to grieve. He had fought in the battle aboard a Dominion cruiser, coordinating the Alliance's left flank. He had lost 1,100 ships from his own people. His hands were still shaking. He looked at Osei, and he spoke quietly. "When I came to your system, I thought your species was beneath us. Primitive, fragile, insignificant. I thought you would kneel like every other species we had ever found." He paused. "Now I understand. You were never beneath anyone. You were simply waiting." Osei looked out at the stars, the same stars that humanity had watched since the first human looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. She thought about every generation that had lived and died under those stars, every hand that had built and broken and built again, every stubborn, foolish, brilliant, terrified human being who had refused to accept that the dark was stronger than the light. "We were not waiting," she said. "We were getting ready." Outside the viewport, the Black Armada turned toward the void. Behind it, 40,000 ships from 23 species followed. They were battered and scarred and fewer than they had been hours ago. But they were together, and they were alive, and they were not afraid. The galaxy had tried to conquer them. The darkness had tried to erase them. And humanity, small and short-lived and stubborn beyond all reason, had answered both with the same word it had always used when the universe told it to give up. No. The Black Armada sailed into the dark, and the galaxy followed, and the fire that burned in every human heart, that old, defiant, unbreakable fire, spread outward into the night like a torch passed from hand to hand across the stars. And the dark, for the first time in 2 billion years, had reason to be afraid.